Hey anyone, I'm Hawk, and today I want to talk about a game that I feel like most people just don't know about, called Bladestorm: The 100 Years' War. So as the name implies, this game takes place in the 100 Years' War, which, if you don't know, anything about history or this time period, it was a war that lasted longer than 100 years in the Middle Ages between primarily the English and the French, though other people, nations, etc. were involved. It was a pretty brutal conflict that had a lot of pauses in between. Lots of kings died. Some were abducted. There was a Black Plague at one point. Joan of Arc rose and fell in this war. And the most famous battle from this time period was the Battle of Agincourt. Well, I should say war. The time period is crazy. The whole war is crazy. It's really interesting. Definitely recommend looking it up. There are plenty of 30-hour-long documentaries about the 100 Years' War, so really good stuff there. But Bladestorm was made by the same people who made the Dynasty Warriors series, and you could see a lot of Dynasty Warriors DNA in this game. It's not like Dynasty Warriors in that you are a single person slaughtering an entire battlefield by yourself. You don't even really have an attack button for your person to singularly swing a sword around. You lead a unit of soldiers, and the type of soldiers that you lead, you could lead all different kinds of soldiers, from swordsmen, archers, you could be cavalry, you have pikemen, different kinds of swordsmen, subclasses, etc. It's very extensive, the amount of soldiers or types of soldiers that you could lead. But you have an attack command button, effectively. So you hold down the right bumper on an Xbox controller. It's R1, I think, on the PlayStation controller. And that tells your people to attack. And you kind of just sweep the field. You can see it in the gameplay here. You also have special abilities, effectively, that each soldier type can gain through dumping XP into their quote-unquote books. The leveling system in this is pretty interesting. It's not like an RPG, but you do wind up leveling up your ability to lead, let's say, as you go through the game. You have a fame level, which indicates the amount of stuff you have access to, or the type of stuff you have access to, equipment and weapon-wise. And as you go through battles and do different objectives and stuff, you'll get more famous naturally, and you can get access to better stuff. But you also have what they call books. It's just books. It's like reading up on how to command an infantry unit. And you unlock different books by finding chests on the battlefield from people that you've taken down, or from locations that you've taken, objectives that you've taken. You get loot chests, effectively. You just walk over them and it tells you what you got at the end of the match. But you get different books, and you could lead different types of soldiers, and you could expand your abilities within those types of soldiers using XP that you gain from battles that you do. So the more that you dump into a specific book for a specific type of soldier, the better that soldier unit will become, and the bigger it will be as well. You could actually grow it up to, I think, 30 people for infantry, and 15 or 20 for cavalry. You'll see in the gameplay here, I don't really do too much cavalry stuff. I didn't at all in the gameplay. But my personal favorite unit to use is the sword and shield. You got really good offense, really good defense, you level them up and they become super OP. So I use mostly just the sword and shield through the majority of the game whenever I play it. Though cavalry is really fun, and it's a hell of a lot faster, so most people seem to like doing cavalry. But you could command archers, you could command all kinds of stuff, and the archers are weak as hell, but really fun if you get good at using them. But the other part is that if you don't want to use just one type of unit, you could wind up making 3 other mercenaries that each in turn command their own unit of soldiers, and you could form an army out of the 4 commanders at that point, leading up to, I think, 200 soldiers yourself, and you move as one unit. You could see it here. I have another person with me, and we're moving as one unit with real good cohesion. A little unrealistic, but it's cool. So you can make a mix of units, have pikemen in the front, swordsmen behind them, archers behind them, etc. You can make a whole grouping that works with almost anything. Each soldier has their weaknesses and their strengths, but you could usually just wind up brute forcing your way through anything if you level up. So it's rarely an issue, but that kind of leads to the difficulty side of things. The game is super easy. It's really, really easy. Well, I should say, once you figure out what you're doing, and once you get a big enough unit, 20, 30 people, it becomes fairly easy. There are still times when you run into someone like another commander, or another mercenary, or a boss, whatever, that it can get a little hairy at times, but it's overall a pretty fairly easy game. I really like this game because I like the whole idea of having a army that you move with, and you're not in command of the big army. You're just a small part, a small cog in the greater machine, and you really get to do that with this game. Each mission is a hub, and in this hub you have a couple of objectives usually, like to take 2 towns and defend 1 castle, let's say. And you could do just that objective if you want. Make sure the castle stays in the hands of whoever you're fighting for, and take those 2 settlements into the hands of whoever you're fighting for from whoever you're fighting, and you could go home. Job's done, get your little payment, everything's good to go. But if you decide to take half of the map before taking the 2 objectives that you have to take, then you wind up getting more fame, and you in turn are allowed to get better equipment. So it's definitely suggested that you just steamroll as much of the map as possible on these missions. Each contract, each mission, has a set amount of days that it takes place over, and you have to complete the objective within that time frame or it fails. You have, I think it's like 10 minutes 10 real minutes for one day, at which you could still get a lot done within those 10 minutes, and once it turns to night, the day is over and you have to go to the next day. So keep that in mind when you take these contracts if you decide to pick this game up. And I definitely recommend picking this game up. It's not for everyone, that's for sure. It is not for everyone. But if you like the idea of leading a unit of soldiers with a army as a mercenary in the 100 Years' War period, and following a pretty, I guess, kind of interesting story, but still nothing worth writing home about, it's a solid game. For me, it's really good to play while I have a podcast on in the background, or, I'm doing something else. It's kind of a mindless game that way. Also, outside of some of the Dynasty Warriors DNA that this game inevitably has, I haven't really seen anything else quite like it. It's pretty unique, and I think it's definitely worth checking out. I mean, there's also I don't know if you could find the original Bladestorm 100 Years War anymore. If you do, it's probably going to be on console, and you're probably going to have to get it online somewhere, because this game was not very big. And that's perfectly fine. But if you get it on Steam, which it is on Steam still, then you'll be buying the Nightmare Edition. Now this is where things get kind of interesting. The Bladestorm Nightmare Edition includes the regular 100 Years War game mode, but it also has the Nightmare game mode, where it's also in the 100 Years War, but crazy shit kicks off, and it's like mythological, and there's dragons and goblins and weird crazy it's like a fantasy game at that point. So it's the 100 Years War with fantasy, and the war is stopped by this event happening that causes all this magical shit to tear the world apart. So I think that game mode is probably where this game is strongest, because it's a little more interesting. There's more going on, there's more different enemy types, there's more stuff to do. It's just a kind of better game mode in terms of just pure gameplay. But I still prefer the original 100 Years War side of things, because that's where I started, that's what I played years ago, and it's closer to home for me. Now, for the downsides of this game, I mean, if we're going to be honest, you have to talk about some of the negatives with this game, and there are a few negatives, I'd say. I mean, it's very repetitive. You have the main story missions, you do them, that progresses stuff, you have cutscenes and all that stuff, but the majority of the stuff you're going to be doing in the game is just repeats in some of the same locations of taking a bunch of objectives for one side, then going back and taking the same objectives for another side, and back and forth and back and forth. You've got to really like the gameplay of this game to enjoy it, and I love it. If you don't, I totally understand. Like I said, it's not for everybody. So outside of being repetitive, the music kind of sucks. I mean, the music that's in it is good, but it's just, there's not much music in it, so you're hearing the same shit over and over and over and over and over again, and that gets old in a game that is as grindy as this one. And that leads to the next negative, is that it is extremely grindy. I like that. Sir Felix likes that. I know there are other people who like grindy games, but even we have a limit, and sometimes if you're not really in the mood for it, this game can kind of hit that limit. All of that aside, it's a generally fun package, in my opinion. I would definitely not suggest paying $60 for this. That is fucking totally overpriced. But if you can find this on sale, whether it's a physical copy or the digital copy on Steam, it's a Japanese game, so it doesn't go on sale often, but if you could find it on sale, I think it's definitely worth like $15. So if the gameplay looks interesting, or what I've talked about sounds interesting, I definitely suggest checking it out. And if you have played it, or are interested in playing it, let us know down below, ask us any questions. Both Sir Felix and I have played the shit out of this game. We'll definitely answer any questions you may have, if you have any. But whatever you think, regardless, let us know down below, and thank you for watching or listening. Stay safe.
Hey, thanks for watching.
Give us a like if you enjoyed it, and dislike it if you didn't.
Let us know what you think about the channel.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Tell your mom.